So I'm going to do a little bit of a recap of what I did for Brick Fair this year. Hope you guys don't mind. It's just going to help when we get to the riverside. Um, so we're going to start with the landscaping part. I discussed the different colors. So your greens, obviously, for your green vegetation areas, your browns, mainly used for roads and sandy parts and deserts. And Peter showed us wonderfully how the whites are used for snowy bits, and then your blues generally used for water. These colors not often used, but you can easily use them in the fantasy side of things. I know people love purple trees and amazing things when you go into the fantasy side. These are pretty much our standard stone colors. So we discussed roads, so I don't have to go too much into browns and mud and all that. I might just mention, like we saw in Venetia's, nicely done on the really worn parts, might be a lot smoother than the rest of your road. Water puddles in the footprints. Then we'll go straight on to what Chris actually mentioned, putting texture into your landscape. So this is just the basic slope, just a step up plate-wise. You can obviously make longer slopes, very varied slopes. Sorry, I know I'm going fast, but for most people this has been covered. So varied slopes just by lengthening them or changing the amounts of studs between step ups. You don't have to use just plates. You can easily get the same effect using a combination of bricks and plates, which does then save on the plates, because this kind of building does get brick intensive, or plate and brick intensive. You can also use a different color under your landscape color, because we don't all have a million green bricks or brown bricks. Or I don't often do double step ups just because it looks kind of odd. Your landscape doesn't flow as easily. If you are going to do a few steps ups, it might be better to change it to a rock or something that looks a bit more natural. So you can put in a dark gray slope or a LBG slope. So your textures also don't have to be straight lines. You can make corners, and you can add in little extras, so you don't have to have that corner every time, or you can put in a rock, or you can put in, for example, a plant if you want to cover up where you have taken a double step or so. And as mentioned earlier, I don't often use the wedge plates because they are so scarce, but it's up to everybody's choice. You can easily make a landscape using wedge plates if you happen to have bought 5 million of them. Okay, so that's landscaping. I know I whizzed through that. Any questions?
I think the only question I've got, I've actually posted it in the chat as well, is like, if you do really high landscapes, what do you use as support underneath to raise and support those higher landscapes? Obviously, you can't fill the plate completely with brick. What's your go-to method to sort of raise things quite a few steps off the base plate?
From my side, I have a combination. You can use pretty much anything. You can use all those lovely 2x4s that you have in pink and purple, or you can use your door frames. I mean, in castle building, I don't find I often use my big bulk parts that you would normally use in city. So for example, door frames or those nice big construction pieces, so you can use all those funny bits and pieces that you wouldn't normally use in castle building as filler in your landscape to give you that height. I do find that you generally only have to put support under the places you're going to put pressure on while building. But if you're building a detailed landscape, that is unfortunately everywhere.
Also, just to add to that quickly, Paul mentioned the door frames. If you are lucky enough to find some 2-stud wide door frames, those are really nice to use. So if you have a collection of Fabuland lying around, you can just call a couple of guys, they'll come take that off your hands. And then also the window frames for different heights, of course. I know a lot of the frame sets that we had a lot of a couple of years ago had the 2x3 little old fire engine box as ovens and things like that. So all of those pieces that you usually would, like Paul said, use in city building come in very handy. So don't chuck them out or give them away.
And also
hide
Duplo.
them.
You can also use Duplo. Duplo works well.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so on to basically rock work. So as mentioned, we tend to keep our 2 grays for stones. I often like to think of them as different types of stones. So this would be a granite, while this would be a limestone. And yes, limestones aren't just white. You can get a high iron content limestone, which might be a bit more red. But I tend to like to keep these for more types. Sandstones. Obviously, these would be more for your snow drifts. And then I like to use these quite often for moss-covered stones or lichens. I tend to think of these always as stones in a landscape. I don't tend to think of them as grass or vegetation. So building a rock face or a cliff or a big height difference into your landscape is actually easier if you make it rock than trying to live it up in landscape in green plates. So the most basic is using the burps. Obviously the burps don't look the greatest, so a lot of people use what slopes they have to cover up the burps and make it look a bit more unique. But you do still get these large. What's all these WhatsApp messages going? I've got quite concentrate. So you do get these large flat pieces. So in castle building, we tend to talk about the big gray wall. So flat walls are great in city. They've been plastered, they've been painted, but in castle, you want texture. You want things people can feel with their eyes, anyway. So with the burps, you still have those odds and ends. So the alternative is to go and build your whole cliff out of slopes. In these type of cliffs, you can use 1 or 2 small bricks just to give that slight height adjustment so that you don't just have all angles. So that would be a basic cliff using just basic bricks and your slopes. I notice I didn't use any inverted slopes in this build, but you can use your inverted slopes as well. It does give a nice effect. Yeah, I did one on its side. Also very nice look to it. It's actually the one I prefer building with. And in this build, I did use the inverted slopes. So you can see the back actually looks quite odd, but the front looks very nice. And then the other alternative is to actually use the curved pieces. Once again, they're not as easy to get hold of as the slopes. And I must be honest, I'm not the greatest builder in this technique. So I don't use it much myself, but then again, I don't have that many of these sloped angled pieces. Any questions on that?
Are the pink ones harder to get hold of than the gray ones?
Much harder, much harder.
On the board on the left there, on its side.
Yes.
How would you put that into the scenery, or how do you connect that to a plate?
I would generally, okay, there's two ways. If you have a green plate, so let's say, for example, you have a green plate, if you go and put a headlight brick or a washing machine on there, so then you can grab one of these and that fits nicely. So it just gives you a clearance for the stud. And your other alternative is to actually you can attach it that way if you prefer, but then it does kind of interfere with your next row up. So you can't lay your next brick on top of that.
Okay.
I also noticed I only used singles, single wides. You can use double wides. It's all up to you and your preference on your build. I think, yeah, it depends on what bricks you have, of course, as well. It's not, I mean, if you look at this, that's 156 bricks just to do that little piece of cliff. So it is once again brick intensive. If you look at this one, it's 80 bricks.
Yeah. Cool.
Anything else? Okay, moving on.
Paul Hilton here. So I
Yeah.
think it's just important also to say regarding cheese slopes, the importance of cheese slopes that you can bring in as well.
Oh yes. If you're going to do the burp builds, you can see the amount of cheese slopes used in here. Cheese slopes are awesome for covering burps, but you don't only have to use them there. You could quite easily use them in both of these types to get the angles. So if you don't have enough of the 1x2 slope, then you could easily replace it with a cheese slope. So that does, because a lot of us have a lot more cheese slopes than we do have 1x2 slopes or 1x3 slopes. Thanks, Hilton. Rivers. Okay, so as mentioned, our general colors for water, obviously the blues, whites can be used for white water or foam or whatever you prefer. In Castle, we tend to prefer the transparents. it does give a nicer look. You saw how Peter used them in as his water in his tracks. And then greens can also be used as water. Often you would have a swamp or a stagnant pond, and they're not always going to be blue. Cheese slopes in this area would often be used as to indicate rougher water, whereas your normal plates would be less rough, but still moving water, and your tiles, where's my head? Your tiles would be used to display or portray a much calmer, slower water, maybe a pond that's not flowing, or a very gentle stream that is slowly making its way down a hillside. So yeah, we have a basic river just using normal opaque bricks or tiles. So you can see it's a little slow river, but where it hits this rock, it does cause a bit of rough water and a little bit after the rock as well. Same thing using our transparent bricks. So you have your white water in transparent white and your normal water in transparent blue. You can also vary it. You don't have to use your transparent bricks. You can mix opaque bricks and transparent bricks. Okay, so in this one, you'll notice the difference in color. So I've used different colors under my transparent bricks to give a sense of depth. So the edges here are shallower and it gets a little deeper here, and this is the deepest part here by the rock, because the turbulence, as the water hits the rock, would cause it to eat out a bit more of the riverbed around here. So it's going to carry off more sand around a rock than it would actually pile up more sand in front of the rock. So yeah, you can decide. Before I move on, let's look at this one. This is transparent green bricks to portray your swampy, stagnant water. Yeah, trans green, not so easy to come by. So if you have a couple of them, you're lucky, and use them wisely. If you don't have many transparent bricks, you can go with your opaque bricks. You'll notice here I used the plates on their sides to give a different feel. Your white waters can have a different, you can have different widths. Why am I trying to do this so fast? Slow down. And you can also use bricks on their side for your water. This gives a very nice swampy feel. You'll notice here I did this in one of my builds. I used lime green for swamp water. The swamp water was actually covered in duckweed, something you get in America. So the water is actually trans green, but the lime areas are where this water's actually been covered by duckweed. So we actually have a duck swimming in the duckweed, and he's parted the duckweed a bit so that we can actually see there's trans water in under there. Just a point on attaching the bricks if you are going to do horizontal water, bricks for water, much like the rock with attachment we showed earlier. It works exactly the same way, and you can cover those studs up with the edging of your landscape. So it gives a nice river. Okay, so not all your water has to be flat. This is something I used in one of my builds for waves. So you'll notice I did a combination of trans and opaque. I think that in this case, the white opaque stood out much better than the trans white bricks would have. Okay, so that's the end of landscaping and rockwork and water. As you can see, it's very basic concepts, and it's up to you how you put them together to make it look awesome. Okay, so there's been some movement on the chat, yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, Richard, you want to share what you said there? Or
Yeah, well, it was Chris that shared the comment.
Yeah, he replied to Richard.
Yes,
yeah.
regarding translate black bricks.
Depends on the subject of the water.
Yeah, I think Chris's reply is very, very good, and I like, from my detailed side of the world, I really like his reply, and it's something I would consider. It all depends on your water and obviously what's under the water. So yeah, it's, you know, if you only have trans black bricks, then think of a reason why they should be there. You know, make up a backstory. So if someone asks you, why do you do your water like that? You say, well, as Chris said, it could be darker stone under the water, whatever. Any other questions?
Paul, would you comment on, can you press that 1x2 tile down, please, sir?
No, I will not comment on that. No, often when we do our water, there are different ways of making water look like water. So you could use your 1x2 trans plate. So obviously you have the studs, so it gives a rougher look to it. But in Castle, we tend to like to be alternative. So often we would do a river top with 1x2 trans tiles, but you wouldn't press them all the way down. So you'd press one side of the tile down, which gives it a bit of an angle. So it would make your river look like you built it out of long cheese slopes. So that is one alternative. It's a technique often used when making floors as well. If you want to do a old dilapidated floor in a ruins, which was originally tiled, but now it's dilapidated, some of those tiles would have shifted and moved up. And so you wouldn't press them down properly to give them that interesting angle. So yes, if anybody ever tries to finish your build for you by pressing down your tiles, you can refer them to the lug rules, I think. Yeah, Will is showing a
There
example.
you go. So
yeah,
those are just
refer them
4
to the
tiles
lug
quickly,
rules that
yeah.
they cannot touch your Lego without permission.
Yes, they will be thrown in the brig. Okay, I think if I may, another part I like using is the 1x1 round plate. I find also in its different variants of trans, blue and clear, that they often show up very nicely around rocks, and around the edges of rivers. So is there anybody else here that has a favorite part to use when working water and building any type of water?
I think if I can comment, the way I like to do my water, I like using the opaque tiles underneath, creating an illusion of depth, and then with the clear tiles on top. But what I also find is I don't just use blues to do that with. I sometimes go into purples, I sometimes go into dark browns, go into tans, go into all sorts of other types of colors as well underneath the surface. That also gives very interesting effects with the illusion of depth. So you really get a sense of a riverbed going really deep if you go into blacks. So, with dark purples and blacks and things like that.
Very true. Very true. Don't be afraid to experiment, I guess. Whenever it comes to that kind of thing, build it and see what it looks like. If you haven't built it to see what it looks like, then you wouldn't know. Anyway, all right. Okay, Joe seems to have a question for Christian. Chris, is there not a chemical in water that reflects blue from sunlight? When flying bodies of water, most of the clean ones seem blue and not brown, green. That will be underneath the water.
Yeah, so my question is, why does the sky look blue? And that's because of Rayleigh scattering, which is a specific kind of refraction that you have in the atmosphere, and that looks blue. And bodies of water then reflect that, the blue sky atmosphere. But if you pick up some water in a glass or in your hands, it's not blue, right? So it depends on how big the body of water is and the surface that can reflect the sky. And that's what I was thinking of with the trans black pieces, because I know I've seen in my own life in, say, volcanic areas in New Zealand where they have black soil, really dark black soil, where they might have a lake or a puddle or even a beach, which has this kind of weird black color because of the substrate below it. It's the water doesn't really have a color of its own. It's what's below it and obviously the sky as well. Yeah.
So remember that if you have a lot of tannins in the water, then they will turn your water either brown or blue, brown or black. And if you think of rainforests and the Amazon, and those type of river systems, which is very high in runoff. Yeah, I mean, so there's all sorts, I suppose.
Also, probably something you'll see a lot when flying over South Africa is you've got eutrophication, so an increase in fertilizer or other kinds of nutrients which have run off pasture land into rivers, which then stimulate algae, which is why you often have this kind of green water surface in South African rivers. Like places like the Amazon even now. So there's quite a lot of factors. And again, it's up to you, right? It's your castle. Maybe the wizard had this experiment where you had a fertilizer and it went wrong and now the river is green because there's too much algae. But it's totally up to you and what you think is pleasing, right?
Yeah, now we only need to find another way to build smell into our builds, except for Lego minifigure faces. That would be funny. All right, cool. Any other questions, guys? Paul, anything you want to add?
No, I think, there are so many things you can consider when building something. You can do it the way you want it, or you can, like Chris does, think of exactly why is it like that? And I think the why is it like that approach is what makes it interesting for people to look at. You know, you're not going to make a dead straight river because all rivers meander. So you're going to have a slightly, what's not straight? You're going to have a river that curves and does funny things. But obviously, there's reasons rivers change direction. You know, they're going to hit some type of rock that they can't erode easily. So, you know, you've always got to think of the why, not just put it down. The why makes it interesting.
If I can add to that, I actually was watching before this some very interesting videos on YouTube around sediment displacement and how rivers actually erode over time. So what they do is they set up many experiments in controlled environments to study these phenomena. I'll forward those videos. It's actually really fascinating to watch exactly how rivers do that meandering and how they actually erode and how they turn into deltas and stuff. So it's actually some really, really amazing and really interesting stuff to watch. So I'll share those videos as well after this.
Yeah, we're not
Thanks,
trying
Peter.
to change everybody into geologists, but
Yes, please.
It does help having a bit of an understanding of the why when you're building a landscape.
Well, I've just taken
Yeah.
the tips that you guys have given around the road building. I don't know if my camera's working or not. Can you guys see my road or not?
It
We
is,
built it.
yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know. I'm not sitting with your problem. I can't see my display. That's just weird.
I
Oh,
think
well, in any
Paul's still
case.
sharing screen.
Oh, that could maybe be it. Paul, do you
Will
own
that
the
make
screen
a
at the moment?
difference? There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Okay, I can even see what I'm seeing now. Phew. So what I've done is I've tried to apply what you guys said. In other words, break the edge up. Okay. It's different. It's busy. I don't know if it's a road anymore. And I suppose that's going to be the trick, is to now go and fix this to make it look like that convex shape that you have, and not just make it one tile in the middle of the road. It does talk to what you tried with your widening of the roads, Paul, because suddenly I've just got like maybe 2 studs on each side, on the left side and the right side. It's going to be interesting. And then, I mean, yeah, also playing with different colors, some browns in the back there.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, that
in terms of
road looks like it's used more by pedestrians, because your edges are coming in quite a bit. So if it was used a lot by carts, you'd have a more definite track as to where the carts would drive.
Yeah, and I suppose the problem here is because we're only working with 8 studs. If you put something in the middle, you're losing 3 of your studs. If you're trying to come in one, you're sitting with like 3 studs left that you can pretty much build the road on. And I mean, so I suppose another question is, would this be legal for edging? That is by 8 studs, but this is not at the right height, but it's green. So if the oak on this side at least edges correctly with the 4 studs from the front all the way in, then that should be okay.
That should be legal, yeah.
Yeah.
And also your texture in the middle doesn't just have to be green. You could add in some of the dark tan and even other colors.
Yeah, I only had a few of the little green what's that, 2x1s, what do we call these little angled jobbies left. And then when it comes to water, so I'm cursing it, well, obviously I'm colorblind, but whatever that color is like sinking me right now, because every now and again I find that color pops up in my toolbox, and I'm like, really, for seriously? And then I actually have to go and take a RGB light and change the ambient lights to get the color difference so that I can see that it pops into a different color. So I know that I'm using the right blues. So I'm using color blind.
Is that lavender?
To offset. I don't know what the hell it is. It comes into the friend sets. It's
Yeah,
painful.
it looks like lavender.
Yeah, it's lavender. It's awesome.
No, man.
You
If
should
we-
build your roads
no.
from that.
No. So if I were to, I don't know if you guys can you see how it now pops to a different color?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and that's literally how I'm sorting. Also, the dots to find the various colors is by changing the ambient light so I can see that it looks the same. Because right now, for me, naked eye, those two would look they are exactly the same. Okay, so I would actually have to do slight offset just to get this to pop a bit more. There we go.
Sorry, Ferdy, are you colorblind? And
Yeah, solidly. No, this is a brown and blue.
Brown and blue colorblind.
Yeah, color dumb because I see colors, but like yeah. So yeah, and then my favorite part right now is the flat tile. And I think that works for me because I'm not creative yet. And maybe Paul, what I was kind of hoping for tonight was some tips on how to turn that into water in a river. And when I say that, you didn't see my pen, did you? So how to turn a flat tile or a plate build into a real river. I mean, depth and that kind of thing. That would be, I don't know if we're going to be doing a video on that at some point. That'll be cool.
I do have a little bit more of a demonstration, but I don't think it contains what you're looking for. But basically what you would do is, if you zoom out a little.
That would be manual. Here we go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all your darks, your darker blues are right at the back there.
Yes, so they where the
You're
boat's
implying
busy
that's-
mooring.
Yeah, so you would
Correct.
tend to make those penetrate more down your river, so that
Okay.
because at the front point where you were showing the road, it is all one level. Basically, your blue's saying it's all one depth, so it's a very flat
Okay.
going in. So you might have two studs in the middle of that which are dark, and then you'd have it
I
coming
get
out
it.
into the delta.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you'd have it spreading
So,
out
a
as
runoff.
it comes. Yeah.
Mm.
So you'd have
Okay.
it spreading out coming there. And then basically, like I said, with whatever you want to put on top of that, if you're going to leave it, because your river doesn't join with anybody else, you can leave it opaque bricks. So you can
Okay.
maybe just put on some extra little plates on top to suggest a bit rougher water, and maybe some
white caps.
these
Yeah.
slopes. Yeah. So
Okay. Oh, very
just
cool.
to give it a bit of variation.
No, that makes sense. Okay. But I mean, so the tip for tonight, thanks guys. That was lekker. Just having a bit of a conversation around having a little middle mount. That was cool. And then trying to break this even more. I mean, and I was just comparing it again with how boring that is, which is a stock standard straight line, right?
Yeah.
So I need to fix that now. Damn it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
Cool.
somewhere down the way, we're going to build carts and things. I see you've got one there. But, you know, you're going to put a lot of effort into carts. You're going to make it look interesting. You're going to make it look attractive. And then you're going to go dump it on a road that looks like the left side. It just doesn't appeal to the viewer. If you dump it on the road on the right side, then you're completing the image. You're completing the story
that makes sense.
you're telling.
Yeah. No, very cool. No, like it. Thanks, guys. And I must say, I'm really enjoying these little sessions and sharing. It actually works very well.
Oh, now we're going to go rush out and get green pieces.
Green.
You
dark
don't
tan,
necessarily,
blue. Yeah.
Luigi, as long as the edge of your build is green and it meets someone else, you can make your whole piece, your whole build, you can make it a desert. Or you can say it's an old dry riverbed that these people have now built their houses on, and they're going to disappear in the next flood or whatever. But, you know, as long as your side pieces match. So you basically, if you're going to do 132 by 32, you're only going to need 64 studs worth of green brick. You know, so it depends on what you want to build. If you have dark green, you know, as long as you're one stud off the edge or even on the edge, and you don't make too many straight lines, you can cover your whole thing in dark green instead of green, as long as your edge is green. So you go with what you have. The mills is only just so we can get together and have it look like one unit, so that it kind of flows into each other. It's not dictating how you should build your build.
You say that, Paul, but when
Cool.
I had a look, and if you look at the green edging here on this little the edge of the build, it actually does kind of just make it pretty. It just gives it a green edge, like there should be some grass there. It frames it. It doesn't make it realistic. It just frames it and makes it artistic, I suppose.
It does, but it
yeah,
doesn't look very natural because it is such a straight line.
Luckily, it's Lego, so I'm okay with sometimes not being natural.
Ferdi, just getting back to your river quickly, if you can pop over back to the river again. Just remember that what you have there as a base of your river, the blue that you have there, you can't go down much further. So if you're going to want to create texture in there and put rocks in there and have the you know, the trans tiles over that, you're going to have to lift what is around it. So, you know, you have banks on rivers. You know, you have rocks on the side of rivers. You have a height difference on the side of rivers so that the water stays down below. Water doesn't naturally flow up in the air. So so if you
it does flow down.
I'm sorry. Okay, my mistake.
The waterfall.
If you want to, you know, if you want to go and have some fun with the textures there and use some trans tile or trans plate in there, then lift the edges and make it higher than the level of the water. And that's going to be the first way that you really get to have fun playing inside the water and having the water, you know, make waves and whatever. So yeah, so we'll get to bridge building at some stage as well, and you know, then it's going to be nice to have your road at a higher level, so that you can actually have, you know, that little wooden bridge go across the water. As it is there, you would have your wooden bridge right on top of the water.
No, 100%. I think a lot of what I'm still doing on this larger display is just mapping out area, and I'm using color to kind of get my head around it. So unlike you, Oaks, that like to play on your computer with Lego, I'm playing with Lego to get off my computer.
No, same here. I don't even know how to use LDD. Whatever. You know?
Yeah, I'd far rather rebuild the thing 30 times than having to plan it out and know what it's going to feel like before the time. So this is really just me mapping a terrain right now. I'm happy to tear it all down and start over.
I'm always asking Paul to teach me how to use LDD, and then I forget like a couple of days later, and then I ask him to teach me again, and then I forget again. And
Daddy, just one last comment before we get to
go for
this. I see as a question. You've put your tracks, your brown tracks into the water. Okay, so generally, if a cart goes through that water, it's going to create grooves coming out of the water. So your tracks should be water flowing. Yeah. So those are going the wrong way. They should be blue going into the landscape rather than brown coming into the water.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris,
when I built it, I literally just had that lying around. So you guys get very technical. Like I'm just plonking things down.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to
good input.
I'm just trying to give everybody else the idea of the concept and using yours as an example. Unfortunately, I'm not
I think it's appreciated. No, please do. That's what we hear. I prefer criticism far more than anything else in life. Absolutely. Yeah, Chris? Sean?
So
I saw your hand move.
I'm really jealous of your elephant. I don't know if you have more than one, but I was wondering if maybe you were thinking about the idea of like an animal watering hole. So what we see in nature is often animals congregate around a certain region of water for various reasons. And then they'll try and pull that water bank and it'll become really muddy. So you'll have this kind of watering hole effect, lots of brown around the area. And I was, since you have the elephant and she's so beautiful, maybe that's something, you could have this watering hole effect. And then obviously also the road running through it, because humans are likely to use the same kind of spaces too. It's more shallow, probably easier to cross. But yeah, so maybe that's something.
At the moment, it's literally just I was doing a size compare. So I use what's on the table also sometimes just to stick other things on it. There's not that much thinking going on here, I must confess. But no, I do like the idea of a watering hole. That's actually very cool.
Okay. We got a question from Joe about the use of dark orange as a color.
Yes, you can use it. That answer the question?
We love dark orange. We love dark red, dark orange, dark everything.
Personally, Joe, I like to keep my dark orange for my deserts, because you don't want to make your desert just tan and dark tan. So those range of oranges are nice for sandstones, and you see them a lot in the Western builds, where you get the different layers of the colors of the stone in the big canyons and so on. I tend not to try use too much in my medieval builds, unless it's there for a reason. It's always comes down to the why for me. I think for Chris too.
Of course, dark orange leaves, very popular.
Yes, but then again, it has to be autumn.
It's always autumn somewhere, Paul.
Yeah, but not in our green medieval land. Unless, of course, your wizard went and scorched the whole area. I was in Kruger last weekend, and it was amazing the color difference where they'd done the fire breaks, how the bushes had all gone that orange with the black ground. It was really a different landscape to see. Okay, so before
maybe you could use.
Sorry, Chris.
Maybe you could use the dark orange for diseased leaves or sick trees. Probably not the most popular thing, but plants get stressed all the time, and they lose their leaves as a result often. So maybe that's another avenue if you wanted to.
Excellent. Okay, so before we carry on too late, I'm just going to do tonight's assignment. So as you can see, a river does not, can everybody see? I'm assuming you can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay. A river doesn't fit very well on a 16 by 16. So it actually doesn't reach the minimum height of our builds, but you can see how it's built. So that there is the interface if you're going to join with someone else, but we've already mentioned that for our first build, rivers will run like faddies from the front of the build to the back of the build, or from the back of the build to the front of the build. So you also don't have to use trans bricks or plates. If you tiles, if you don't have them, you can go with just normal opaque plates like Faddy's. Because we're not joining with anybody else. So your river can have different minerals in it, which makes it not so transparent or whatever. So because it doesn't fit, I made a little adjustment to make it fit. You can see if I put it next to standard mills, it just gets there. It looks okay. So you can do your assignment on a 16 by 16. But you might want to go a little bit bigger this time because it's not going to be great. There's not much to work with if you're on a 16 by 16. You can do your river without the road, or you can do your river in the road. You can see I used just slight color changes because this is no actual bridge. It's a fording point. So the river is actually shallow enough that people can, like Faddy's, just drive a cart through it. Just to show the variation, yeah, I did the rock work on its side. So this is a very rocky area and the river's carved through there. Okay, I didn't change the depth of the river. But anyway, so you can see you don't have to make a gradual slope like this one. You can decide whatever your river's edge will look like. If you want to put a bridge on, if you want to start fiddling with that, go for it. Let's see what you come up with. And yeah, so that's the assignment for the next meeting. I think Faddy's got a head start on all of you, so and that's it. That's done.
Cool stuff.
Excellent.
Anybody else want to pop in? Any other questions? I think Audrey had something on chat here. Let me just quickly check. Would dark orange be able to work as clay or rooigrond modder? Rooigrond modder.
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
Why not?
Audrey, rooigrond modder, of course. Why not?
It's basically whatever you want it to be. It's just got to make sense. If someone asks you why is that orange, you got to tell them why. You can't just stick it down and hope. You know, the fun is make it and then telling people why you made it. That's the fun of it.
Okay, I think that's quite a key thing to take out of tonight. Whatever you want to do, as long as you can tell us why you did it, then it's worth doing.